When was the last time you practiced English? Will you be able to last until the end of this podcast? Today, we're looking at many different ways to use the word last in this episode of
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And if you are a new listener to the podcast, you're very, very welcome. And if you've come back, hello again. With over 45 years of teaching English between us, Reza and I are going to help you improve all aspects of your English and take it to the next level. How are you today?
I'm very good, Craig. I'm very good. I've decided to use American English today. I'm very good. I never used to say that. I used to always say I'm very well, and I was taught to say good is wrong. But Americans do it, so I can do it, right?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, say, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I'm good. So I'm pleased that you're good, and I'm very well too. To start the show this week, we have a voice message from our friend Andres from Ecuador, who is now living in London. So hello, Andres. Let's listen to his message.
Hi Craig, hi Reza, how are you doing? This is Andres from, I'm born in Ecuador, but I lived 14 years in Mallorca, and now I'm living in London since November last year. First of all, I would like to say thank you very much for your effort, guys. Your hard work is very useful for lots of people around the world, and it's amazing. For sure, you will have 300 podcasts in the future. I love reading books, especially books about personal development. Have you ever read any book about this matter? And which one? Once again, congrats for your 200 podcasts and have a huge hack. Bye-bye.
Well, Andres, all the way from Ecuador, thanks very much for your message. Thanks for your congratulations. We hope we do have at least another 300 podcasts if we can last that long.
Oh, that was very clever.
Oh, see what I did there? Craig, that was a very good message, as you know, but I think I noticed something that Andres could maybe improve on.
What's that?
Did he say, I'm born? He might have. I'm not sure because of the quality of the audio, but it's possible, Andres, you said, I'm born instead of I was born.
But that's a common mistake anyway. So yeah, that's a good point to make.
But it may be just the audio. So apologies if it's the quality of our audio, but you said it right. But just to clarify. Also, you said, I'm living in London since. Well, no, because if you started in the past and it's up to now, you have to use present perfect continuous. So I have been living in London since. But we understood you, Andres.
One small thing about Reza's point with I was born, when we say was in like this in the middle of a sentence, remember it's very, very weak. So we don't actually say was normally, we say was. It's with that weak schwa. So I was born. I was born in London. I was born in Ecuador. I was born in Mallorca. Well, Andres, for me, you have opened a Pandora's box. You have opened one of the subjects that I really, really enjoy talking about. So, Reza, please stop me after 2 minutes. Don't let me speak about this too long. Personal development and books on self-improvement. Do you read any?
I must be honest that I rarely read such books, Andres. Occasionally. How often do you read them, Craig?
I used to read them a lot more often, and I'm the kind of person very similar with productivity. I read a lot of information and books about personal development and productivity, but I very rarely actually do anything. So I really enjoy reading about and listening to podcasts about this subject, but unfortunately I don't often put it into practice. But I do want to recommend some books to, Andres has probably heard of these books, but if anybody is interested in reading about personal development in English or in Spanish, here are some of my very, very favorite books that I do reread occasionally. Probably my favorite is by Stephen Covey. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And he speaks about beginning with the end in mind, which means putting your ladder against the correct wall before you start to climb, and having a map of a city that's relevant to where you want to go. And what he's really saying is make sure that you're going in the right direction in your life before you start working towards your goals. So it's about goal setting, personal development, and it's a very, very well written book.
That sounds good, but what do you do if somebody pulls the rug from under you, so to speak?
Well, if it's against the right wall, then you just start on the bottom rung. The rung of the ladder is the first step of the ladder, and you start climbing again. But what mistakes some people make, for example, is they go to study something at university because their parents push them to do it, or because they think they're going to earn a good salary. And when they're in their 30s or early 40s, maybe they realize that's not what they want to do. And they should have studied or worked in a different field, a different area. So what Covey says in his book is before you start studying and working and getting good at something in a particular area, make sure it's really something that you're passionate about and something that you want to do, even if somebody pulls the rug from under your feet.
Yeah, I must say that's great advice.
Here are some more books I definitely recommend for organization. Getting Things Done by David Allen. In Spanish, it's Organízate con Eficacia. Links to all of these books, or the names of all of these books, will be in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/208. Another one I really like is by Tim Ferriss. That's Ferriss, who also has a very good podcast. And the book is called The 4-Hour Work Week. The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And also some names to look up on the internet if you're interested in personal development. Gary Vaynerchuk, who started out by selling wine with his father and now has a multi-million-dollar media company. There's Seth Godin, who is a modern-day guru for personal development. Pat Flynn, who was made redundant. There's an architect who was made redundant and started his own business. And Malcolm Gladwell. So I'm sure Andres knows the names of these very famous people. And if you'd like to practice your English and learn more about personal development, why not check them out? Shall we move on to our next voice message from Mamin from Biescas?
Hi Craig, hi Reza, this is Mamen from Biescas. How are you doing? I hope you're getting better, because I think you've been with bronchitis, Craig, and also Reza, I think that you've been with a bit of a flu. So, well, I hope you're feeling better. I was wondering if I'm still on time to ask you about anything. So this is my question. What do you think about love at first sight? Well, I also want to ask you if you could help me with one issue that I have. Finally, I started to study English. Word. So, well, I've been doing a lot of rephrasing exercises in order to improve my terrible grammar. So I wonder if you could help me with the use of the word last in different sentences. So maybe you had a podcast, or if you don't have it, maybe you could make a new podcast about this topic. So that's all for now. Guys, thank you very much. As always, a big kiss and a big hug. I love you guys. Bye.
Well, thank you very much, Mammon. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. And yes, I am now much better from my bronchitis. And how's your flu, Reza?
Yes, very nice to hear from you, as always, Mammon. And thanks for asking. I feel better as well. My flu is a thing of the past. I'm ready to talk you into boredom in podcasts with my recuperated voice.
Thanks for asking. You did say, though, Mamin, that we've been with bronchitis and the flu. That's not correct. It's better to say, I think you had bronchitis, because things like a cough or a cold or bronchitis or the flu, they're things that you have in English. So I had bronchitis, now I'm better, and Reza had the flu, and he's much better, thank you.
There's one other mistake that I noticed. You said still on time, I think, when you should have said still in time. On time, in time, they're often confused, but they're not the same. If you're on time, you're punctual. Craig, no comments about me.
You were today. You were very.
I was on time. I wasn't late. I was on time.
You were extremely punctual today.
And in time means that it's not too late to do something. Are we still in time to get into the cinema? And they said, no, sorry, the film started half an hour ago and you can't get in. Yeah, we didn't arrive in time. It was too late.
So if you're going to the airport to catch a plane, make sure you get there in good time, in time. And one more thing that you said, Mamin, you talked about going back to English again, studying English again, and doing some refreshing exercises. That's not a common collocation with exercises, language exercises. If something's refreshing, it makes you feel really good. For example, when it's hot in Spain and you drink a cold glass of orange juice, it's really refreshing. It refreshes you. It makes you feel much better. If it's hot and you go in the swimming pool or you go in the sea, then the water is refreshing. A better collocation for this example is revision exercises, because the verb repasar is revise and revision will be the adjective. So revision exercises. Reza, do you believe in love at first sight?
I do, and I know of one case where it happened to me. That's with Berta. As soon as I saw Berta...
That's Berta the dog, to clarify.
The dog, the greyhound, La Galga. It was love at first sight, and it was mutual. Honestly, she was brought into a room of about 5 or 6 people, and she came straight over to me. It's true. And she was brought back to the middle, and she looked at me and came straight over to me again.
I also believe in love at first sight. The first time I saw a red MG 1972 Roadster with a soft top convertible with an 1800 engine, I fell in love with that car. So definitely love at first sight. But with people, I'm not sure. I believe in lust at first sight, very strong physical attraction, but deep, deep love, I'm not sure that can happen just by looking at someone. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I wouldn't rule it out. To rule something out is to say it's impossible, but certainly extremely improbable.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what you think, Mamin. Let us know. So let's speak about last. Well, last can be an adjective, so it means ultimo. For example, the last podcast we recorded was about biscuits. So in this case, last means the most recent. Reza, what's the last letter of the alphabet?
In British or American English?
In both.
British Z, American Z.
Z. So in this case, it means the final. What's the last number? What's the last letter? Etc.
Craig, have you ever used the website lastminute.com?
Not for a while, because I was speaking to a friend in the UK last week on the phone, and he said that he was looking at it and he doesn't think that you can find any last-minute deals on that website anymore. He said that maybe 2 weeks before you fly, you can find a really good deal on a flight or a holiday, but last minute, like the day before or 2 days before, probably not. I don't know what you think. Do you think it's effective, last minute?
Not really, to be honest. Craig, you said you hadn't used it in a while. When was the last time you used it?
I think you'd have to go back to, I don't know, 2003, 2004, a long time ago. Yeah. In fact, I can't remember the last time I used it. How do you say in English, ¿Quién es el último? Which is very common here in Spain.
Oh, for the queue, la cola.
La cola.
Say, who's last or who's last in line in la cola? Who's last in line?
And you might say that in the UK, if you're walking to a bank or you're waiting at the airport to check in, you might say, excuse me, are you last in line? Are you the last person in line?
Correct. So that was last used as an adjective. It can also be used as an adverb. For example, who spoke last? You or me? So speak is a verb, speak, and the past spoke. So last here describes the verb. So it's an adverb. Who spoke last? Not lastly. We'll talk about that in a minute. But more examples of last as an adverb. Who signed up last? So sign up is a verb. So last is an adverb. Who signed up last on Patreon? Well, we'll tell you at the end of this show. We'll tell you who our latest subscriber is.
We've had quite a few recent subscribers to Patreon, so thank you very much. And we'll tell you at the end of the show who is our latest subscriber, the last one to sign up. So lastly, with ly, can mean finally. So you can use it as an adverb when you list things. That's very common when you're writing in an exam, for example, for a first certificate or advanced, and you want to begin the paragraph with different points. So you'd say firstly, blah, 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 secondly, thirdly, and then, of course, lastly. Por el último, lastly.
To last can also be a verb. In Spanish, it would be usually durar. For example, and this is a very good question because we don't know the answer. How long do our podcasts usually last? They vary a bit, don't they, Craig?
They usually last too long, in my opinion. Well, we try to make our podcast last for 30 minutes, more or less, but recently they've been lasting a little longer. So maybe they've been lasting 40 minutes or 45 minutes. And the episode 200, when we celebrated 200 podcasts, that lasted for an hour. Yeah. So they've been lasting quite a long while.
But by the way, would be very interested to hear your feedback about that. How long do you think, listeners, our podcast should last? Give us some tips about what you think is the ideal duration.
Probably say 5 minutes. Reza, do you think books and newspapers will last much longer?
You mean in physical paper print?
Yes.
I do, certainly in the case of books. I'm not so sure about newspapers because newspapers are such an ephemeral thing. They come and go and you only need them for a day or two and then they haven't got much value.
And they're using trees and resources and paper. Yeah.
No, so I don't know. Whereas a book is something that can impact you for your whole life.
So it lasts longer.
Lasts longer. So you want it to last longer. Yeah, it can last digitally forever, of course. But people like things which physically last a long time. People like going to the shelf in their house and finding that book. People like it. There's something very satisfying about that. So I think books will last forever, really. I honestly do.
I agree with you, but I agree with you with newspapers that I don't think... I'll be surprised if newspapers last more than another 10 years. I'll be very, very surprised.
In their paper format.
In their current format of paper, yeah.
They'll all go digital.
Online newspapers, they'll last for a long, long time. But physical paper newspapers, I don't think they're going to last very long.
Yeah, why pay for that paper when you can get the news free online? It's not going to work, is it, in the future?
Another use of last could be as a pronoun. And here's an example. I think that this podcast is even better than the last. So the last means the last podcast or the last one. So here it's used as a pronoun. Do you think this is better than the last?
Hopefully we're getting better and better all the time. So I certainly think that our latest, that means the ones which have been happening recently, the latest, are certainly better than the very early ones we did, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. Reza, I think last can also be used with a time expression.
It can be used with more or less any time expression you want, but be careful. There can be a problem with this, and it's all because of one little word. Let's split it into two. You've got last plus that time expression, which means in the past. Pasado or pasada in Spanish. So, for example, I saw Sam last week. Vi a Sam la semana pasada, last week. Or last month was great. El mes pasado era genial, era fantástico. Easy enough. You notice I didn't use the word the. It would be incorrect if I said the last. I saw Sam last week, or last month was great, meaning pasado, pasada. If you put the with last, it has a different meaning. The last, plus a time expression, can be past or present or future or any time. So it's el or la último or la última. I'll give you a few examples. Tomorrow, which is obviously the future, right? Tomorrow, I'll meet her for the last time. Oh, how sad. I'll meet her for the last time. But that's tomorrow. So obviously it's not pasado. It hasn't happened yet. So that would be mañana la voy a ver por la última vez. So it hasn't happened yet. That's the last time. Can you think of a few more, Chris?
Well, there's one that you mentioned quite recently on a podcast. It wasn't the last podcast, but it was a recent podcast. You said the last month of the year is December.
Right.
The last day of the week is Sunday. So that will be an example when you can use the, and it's tricky for Spanish speakers because in Spanish, I believe that you would use the article in Spanish. You'd say, I saw Sam el último mes. So you would use it in Spanish, but you don't use it in English. So that's something to remember.
That's the thing, yeah. Craig, a question for you to practice. When was the last time you cried?
Oh, that would have to be, well, if I'm honest, and I should be honest, it was last month when my mum passed away. That's the last time I cried. As you know, my mum died, unfortunately, last month. And I don't cry often, but that's the last time I cried.
Yeah, I was very sad to hear that, as I'm sure you are, listeners, as well. But the show must go on. We have to keep podcasting. It's true, isn't it, Craig?
Here's a question for you. When did you last? Because you can ask the question in two ways. You can say, when was the last time that you, or when did you last, using the verb. So when did you last sleep in a tent?
Ooh, that's a good question. A very long time ago. I think about 10 or 12 years ago. It was in France. And I'll never forget it because there was a hailstorm. You know, hail is, what is it?
Granizo?
Yeah. I thought that someone was attacking me because it felt like people were hitting the tent. I thought, oh no, I'm going to be killed. Some crazy man's hitting the tent. And I looked outside and there was a hailstorm.
It's the French. They are attacking the Englishmen.
Yeah, it's a tent. It's horrible. So it was quite frightening, actually. I'll not forget it in a hurry. A day that most people like is the last Friday of each month because it's often payday, isn't it?
It is, yep.
So there's an example of the last with the because it's la última. I'm talking about 2 months ago, a year ago, today, tomorrow. It's always the last Friday of each month. So the last is not linked to any specific time. It can be any time. But if you use last without the, it always means in the past.
So let's look at a few more expressions and collocations with the word last. And again, thank you, Mamin, for this excellent topic because I didn't really think how many uses there are of last. There's at last. Do you remember the song by Etta James, At Last?
How does it go? Can you sing a bit?
I can't. You know I can't sing. I'll try. At last, my love has come along. My lonely days are over.
Actually, sorry, Craig. I regret asking you. Please stop.
And life is like a song. I'll put a link to this. You asked for it.
I did.
That's the last time you're going to ask me to sing on the podcast. I will put a link to this wonderful song by Etta James. The words are very easy to understand, and there's lots of uses of last, especially at last. Can you think of any other expressions and common collocations with last?
Well, you said at last, yeah, and quite often people add long, at long last to exaggerate, meaning it's been a long time, but here it is, por fin, at long last.
Yeah. Another one, you could say these last few days. So I've been feeling a bit tired these last few days, or these last few weeks, or these last few months. And we were saying before we started recording today that we have both been busy these last few weeks, haven't we? We've been quite busy these last few days.
We certainly have. To have the last word is another common expression. If you have the last word, that means you are the one who gets to say the final thing in a conversation or an argument. Craig, do you know anybody who always has to have the last word?
You.
Me? Oh,
Yes,
no,
you.
I said it.
You're supposed to say, no, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I'm joking. Last forever is another collocation. Things don't usually last forever. Do you think anything lasts forever?
Can love last forever?
Let's hope so.
I think genuine love lasts forever.
But people die, so isn't love felt by people? So if you feel love, how can it last if you're not there to feel it?
Do you know what? Call me...
As a concept, maybe.
Yeah, call me overly romantic, but I think that something remains there in the ether, in the atmosphere. I think the love lasts. I honestly do. It lasts forever, even after the people die. I really do.
Well, that's a lovely thought.
Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
They maybe even never existed. We don't know. It might just be a story that was made up. But the love of that story still lasts. It still moves people. The love's there. Don't you think?
I suppose you could say that the love of God lasts forever, because even though people die, the love for a God, a unifying being, would last. So yeah, perhaps. Last chance. This is your last chance.
Your last opportunity.
Yeah, that's another collocation.
Last but not least is a good expression, although some of my students overuse it when they write and when they speak. I sometimes regret teaching them because they say, in the morning, I wake up, have a shower, have my breakfast, and last but not least, go out to catch the bus. I say, no, don't say last but not least, because it's really not that important. So last but not least means here comes the final thing, but it's no less important than the others. In fact, maybe it's more important. So you shouldn't overuse it. You only use it to be dramatic. You know, like imagine at the Oscar ceremony, they're giving out all the different awards. The awards for best makeup, best lighting, best stunt men or women. And they say, and last but not least, best director. Ooh, that's a big one. Last but not least. So you've got to wait for the big one.
Also, when we thank our sponsors, we give a long list of names at the end of the show, and we equally value everybody's contribution. So the last name this week is a new sponsor, Jose Eduardo. So, of course, when we get to his name, Jose Eduardo, last but not least, Jose Eduardo, because his name is at the end of the list, that does not mean to say that we value him less than the others.
Do you know Jose Eduardo's last name?
No, it did not appear on Patreon. So last name is surname. Another use.
Craig, what did you do last night?
I watched a film, RoboCop.
The original?
No, the one that was made in 2014.
Ah.
Yeah, it was quite good. Enjoyed it. What did you do last night?
Spent a little time, not that much, but as much as I could preparing a podcast, and then went to bed.
So last night, you can say also last week. What did you do last week? Oh, last week I went out for dinner. Last weekend and last year are common collocations.
In fact, any time expression, really, but they're the most common. Last century, last month, last summer, last Christmas.
Lastminute.com.
Anything you want.
And we spoke about beer in episode 203 of Ingles Podcast. And of course, we mentioned the expression, the last round. So who is buying the last round of beer is another common collocation. I bought the last round, for example.
That's a good one, isn't it? Because it doesn't exist in Spain anyway. I don't know about other Spanish-speaking countries, but it's never the last round. It's always the penultimate, isn't it, in Spain? You can't say the last one. But we just say the last and we go home.
Another common collocation is something that my friend Pepito said last week when he lost his job and he lost his wife. And he said the last straw was losing my flat as well. So the last straw is, how would you say that in Spanish? La última...
El colmo.
El colmo, of course, yeah. El colmo.
Yeah.
The last straw, S-T-R-A-W.
It actually comes from the old expression. I think it's from the Bible, but I'm not sure. The last straw that broke the camel's back. It's from that, isn't it? So the idea that a camel is carrying a heavy load, una carga of straw, paja, and you've put too much on it, but the camel is still standing. But if you put just one more straw, that's it. It's going to collapse. It's too much.
You can also say that if something's dying, you can say it's on its last legs. For example, my poor printer that's connected to my computer here, it's causing problems. It's not printing properly. My printer is on its last legs. I will have to buy a new one very soon. So if something is on its last legs, it's about to break. It's going to break. It's going to die. It's going to finish soon.
A nice expression to use is to have the last laugh. That's L-A-U-G-H. Ha, 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 laugh. So imagine you're in a situation where people have been laughing at you. You've been unlucky, you've been unfortunate, and people decided to laugh at you. Well, if something later happened and you could laugh at them, you could take your revenge, then you have the last laugh. And there's a nice proverb which comes from Chinese originally, but has been translated into English and is very common. He who laughs last laughs longest.
It's not easy to say, is it?
No, a lot of lo there. A lot of alliteration. Do you remember our poetry episode? Those of you who've heard it, la, alliteration. He who laughs last laughs longest. In other words, it's saying be patient, wait. Let other people laugh now if they want, but don't you laugh. If you laugh at the end, then you will have the best laugh. Apparently that was Confucius who originally said that.
So finally, we have one more collocation, the day before last, or the week before last. So today is Thursday. What was the day before last? I can see Razor.
Sorry, can I say it again?
I see Razor thinking here.
You caught me off guard.
I did, didn't I? You have to think now. So today's Thursday. What was the day before last?
Tuesday.
Correct. Because yesterday was the last day, so that was Wednesday. The day before last, Tuesday. So that's quite common. You say, oh yeah, when did you see Pepito? I saw him the week before last. Not last week, because last week is la semana pasada. It's the week before last, or the day before last, or the year before last. That's another collocation with last.
And Spanish speakers, I should say, are always surprised that we don't have one single word for that. Because in Spanish, you do, it's anteayer.
It would make sense.
Ayer, yesterday, and anteayer is the day before yesterday.
Although you don't hear that very often.
You don't hear it. No, it does exist. Yeah, you're right. You don't hear it much. Well, in English, we don't even have a word. You've got to say the day before last. There's no other way of doing it.
And I think Mamin's question was focused on sentence transformations because I think Mamin's studying at the moment for B2. And as you know, Mamin, in the use of English, you have these sentence transformations and in CAE also. So here's an example. You could say that Reza told his students he would not explain this again. Reza told his students that he would not explain this again. Is that a familiar sentence?
It is, yeah. When I get bored.
So, how could you transform that sentence using the word last? What do you think?
Maybe this is the last time I will explain this.
Yeah.
This is the last time. So if we're reporting it, he said this is the last time he would explain this.
So I hope that's helped you a little, Mamin, and other listeners. If you have any more questions about last, please send us a message. Before we go, some films with last in the title, because there are quite a few. I don't know if you can think of any, Reza, any famous movies or films with last in the title?
I certainly can, yeah. The Last of the Mohicans. Do you remember that?
Of course.
Yeah. With Daniel Day-Lewis playing a Mohican Indian and Madeline Stowe. That was a good film.
There was The Last Emperor, starring Peter O'Toole, Joan Chen and Vivian Wu, The Last Emperor.
Then you had Harrison Ford, of course, as Indiana Jones, and The Last Crusade, and Sean Connery playing his father.
And a film I saw quite recently. Again, I re-watched The Last Samurai. Very good film with Tom Cruise and one of my favourite actors and comedians, Billy Connolly. The Last Samurai.
I hope poor Billy Connolly's not doing too badly.
He's not well, is he?
He might not last much longer, I'm afraid to say.
I think he's on his last legs, unfortunately. Poor Billy.
The Last King of Scotland is another interesting film. I don't know if you've seen that. That was with James McAvoy and Forrest Whitaker, who played Idi Amin. So it's actually about Idi Amin. It's about Uganda, but it's called The Last King of Scotland. I'm not going to give too much away if you haven't seen it, but check it out.
Yeah, no spoilers. Have you seen The Last Temptation of Christ with David Bowie, William Defoe, and Harvey Keitel? It's quite a heavy film. Very heavy and dark.
I've seen it, yeah. That film was very controvertido. A lot of people criticized that film, didn't they?
Because of the director?
Yes, and they said that it implied that Jesus was, almost human in his, his feelings, the things that he could have done better. So it was a very controversial film.
It was, yeah. A film from many years ago, a classic actually, The Last Tango in Paris, with Marlon Brando, Catherine Breillat, and Jean-Pierre Lude.
Yes, by the way, do watch that film, but don't watch it if you're not over 18, because it's quite racy, isn't it?
Well, it was racy for the time. I'm not sure whether today it would be considered prohibited. I don't know.
But it was another controversial
one. At the time,
one.
it was very controversial because of some sex scenes, but I think it's quite mild these days. Last Tango in Paris.
X-Men, The Last Stand. So very often, last is used in the name of a sequel of a film, particularly if it's supposed to be the last one in the sequel, although sometimes they make another one after that. But in theory, for the last film, they say The Last Crusade, for example. We said Indiana Jones, or X-Men, The Last Stand. The Last Stand means the last resistance.
And finally, there's a very good film that I enjoyed recently with Dustin Hoffman and Emma Thompson, two of my favourite actors. It's called Last Chance Harvey.
What a coincidence. I watched that very recently myself.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah. I saw it about 2 weeks ago.
I thought it was a lovely film. Very light. It's a romantic comedy. Very clever script, I thought. And very well acted. I really enjoyed it. One of those films that you're really tired on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon and you just want to flop on the sofa. To flop means just fall down on the sofa and relax like a piece of spaghetti on the sofa and watch a good film. Last Chance Harvey.
Why don't you get in touch with us and tell us, when was the last time you watched a romantic comedy and did you like it? Let us know.
When was the last time you sent us a voice message? Maybe it's time you sent us a voice message again or sent us your first one. How many different uses of last can you include in a 90-second message? Can you last that long? 90 seconds? If you prefer to contact us by email, you can reach Reza at belfastreza@gmail.com.
Or Craig at inglespodcast.com.
Before we go, we'd like to thank, as usual, our wonderful sponsors, beginning with our gold sponsor, Bruno, on Patreon, and his walking tours of the wonderful city of Copenhagen through his company, CopenhagenWalkingTour.com, come very well recommended by Reza and I. You can take these tours in English or Spanish and go and see the wonderful city, get to know it with Bruno's guides and see the castles and everything that Copenhagen has to offer. Or you could enjoy the favela area of Rio de Janeiro with tours also run by Bruno's wonderful guides who are local. And the tours are very safe and led by very knowledgeable guides. And it also helps the community to improve on their daily needs because a lot of the money that you pay to do the tour goes back into the community. Go to Bruno's website to find out more information. And the address for the Favela Walking Tour is favelawalkingtour.com.br. Of course, those links are in the show notes on our website, inglespodcast.com.
And lastly, we'd like to thank our Patreon sponsors, who are Ana, Dana, Pachi, Manuel Tarazona, Juan Carlos Beatriz, Pedro, Maite, Lara, Rafa Bancels, Nestor from Luces Extrañas, Maria Gervati, Lorena, Sara Jarabo, Carlos Garrido, Mamen, Juan Leiva, Corey Finnerim from IVNV.com, Miren, Jose Luis Aregui, Agus Paulucci, Mariel, Manuel García Betegón, Raúl López, Rafael José Manuel Fernández Picazo, Pilar Martínez, Ganbate Blog, Igor, Ignacio Espona, Kieran, Ani Barra, Marina, Juan Carlos Pantín Fernández, Joel o Joel, Alejandro, Pluma, Alex, Quadra, José Emilio Villena, Emilio Manuel Martínez Rivas, and our latest patrons, Chema Santa Cruz, Ana Fernandez Monterrubio, Carlos Cano Domingo, Gustavo, Eva Maria Elizalde Martínez, Arminda Fafo, and, as Craig mentioned earlier, Jose Eduardo.
Last but not least, Jose Eduardo. Thank you everyone for sponsoring the show. It's wonderful to see the names getting longer and longer. If you want to join our Patreon program for $1 per month, you get instant access to recent transcriptions that have been lovingly transcribed by Angelica Bello from Madrid. Go to patreon.com/Ingles podcast for more information. Also, thank you to the pencil of Patricia Alonso and to Patricia herself, who continues working hard to transcribe episodes for you on the website for free. We now have available episodes 1 to 22 and also 131 to 142. What's next week, Reza?
And next week's episode all about Italy.
And we'll be answering more of your questions, so we look forward to speaking to you next week. The music in this podcast is by Pitts, and the track is called See You Later. We have a voice message to Shart. Shart? That's a good
Do you know
shart.
the word shart, yeah?
That's a good shart.
Do you use the word shart? As in half shit, half fart?
No, I don't.
Oh yeah, it means half shit, half fart. You said I'm going to shart. I hope not. Half shit, half fart.
I was trying to say start, and it came out like a shart.
Yeah, half shit, half fart. That's a shart.
Oh, okay.
It's one of these new words, yeah.
That's obviously a Belfast word.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's not.
No. You kind of get it in like these urban dictionaries and all that. You'll find it. Shart.
Okay, I'll shart again.
Please don't.